So we were just talking about attempts at harnessing phytohormones to promote specific physiological effects in cannabis plants. I had mentioned KNF originally introducing this concept to me through osmotic extraction using brown sugar and the fermented plant juice input. And I kind of dove into, the efficacy of this process. Is it possible to extract phytohormones through osmotic extraction, and how much phytohormones are actually present in plant inputs, and whether or not that level of phytohormones can create a physiological response in plants. From using different fermented plant inputs, FPJs, FPEs, it's really obvious that there is like a physiological response, to me anyway, when we introduce them effectively with like an enzyme source and a microbe source specifically. But I'm very curious, and have always been really curious on what exactly is causing that response, because we're using a whole wide profile of inputs when we're doing these things, OHN, brown rice vinegar, FPJ, so on, as well as a microbe source. And we're introducing a pretty decent amount of glucose also in like brown sugar. And what comes to mind is there's a few different possibilities, right? One is, it is phytohormones. Another is the organic acids are providing the physiological response. I think it's very possible that there could be quorum sensing that's happening, where we're triggering biological communities to interact and perform in a particular way, like change their behaviors through introducing compounds that trigger like quorum sensing in the soil. So I kind of looked into it, and it seems like the amount of phytohormones present in organic inputs is so minuscule, and also they're not water soluble. A lot of the times through like phytohormone extraction processes, people are using pretty intense solvents, ethanol, hexane, naphtha sometimes, and then concentrating them from a huge amount of organic matter into a very concentrated form when using phytohormones. So to me, that feels like that's probably not very practical, that it's the phytohormones causing it. So I kind of looked into more the profile of organic acids and the ability for organic acids to stimulate specific physiological effects, as well as quorum sensing. And for people who don't know, quorum sensing is the triggering of microbial communities to behave a certain way when in presence of enough concentration of specific compounds. So when high microbial populations come in like close proximity to each other through like a particular nutrient density, microbial density, they can build up certain levels of certain compounds that then trigger them to do a process, which is usually like biological breakdown, nitrogen fixation, biofilm fermentation, disease suppression, phytohormone production, when they get to like these levels. So I'm thinking that that's probably a big part of it, those two things. I just went ranting on forever.
No, I think you're bang on with a lot of what you're saying. I think we probably have come across many people talking about how tricontinol is a very has strong benefits within the cannabis plant, and coming from alfalfa, and it is, and it can be incredibly powerful, but the sources of that tricontinol, the sources of the alfalfa being used, make a big difference in terms of are you actually getting the true experience of tricontinol. Otherwise, it's probably just getting the benefits of having alfalfa. And I think some of our organic acids, many organic acids are phytohormones, right? Mm-hmm. And so we do see that signaling. Glucose, for example, is a not necessarily considered a phytohormone, but it is a signal. It does strong signaling within the plant, much like citric acid does, much like acetic acid. Strong signalers, arguably phytohormones as well. But I think it's so critical how you're explaining it, that it's, sometimes we're being sold snake oil.
Do you think it is possible that phytohormones are responsible for these physiological responses?
I don't think we're getting. I would say that it's our definition of a phytohormone as well, right? Because to me, glucose arguably can be considered a phytohormone because it does signal within the plant.
Right, and phytohormones are organic acids, right? Right.
In some cases too, but if it's specifically that I'm getting gibberellins from kelp because I have dehydrated kelp, I'm not sure about that. I might feel more comfortable with a kelp extract, and believing that I have gibberellins from that kelp extract and using that.
So you think that so you think that it's possible then that we can be using these kind of lower forms of extraction methods to pull phytohormones like auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, trichotinols, all this stuff. You think that it's possible that we can be integrating them through like these kind of low tech extraction processes? Sorry,
not necessarily through a fermentation process, because to me, a fermentation process may actually break down some of those acids, right? Where I would feel more comfortable with other forms of an extraction method that would not look to break down those acids to amino acids or so on.
Okay.
Yeah.